Again, I'll show you.
Do you want us to do more of this?
If you could slide over just a little bit so nobody's right behind whoever is speaking. And then you can see it doesn't take a whole lot. Yes, you'll each get a chance.
Okay.
We're good to go.
Okay, we're ready.
Good morning. I'm Lorinda Hafner, the senior pastor here at the Coral Gables Congregational United Church of Christ. And as a person of faith, a minister in the United Church of Christ, and representing our congregation's board of justice and witness, I stand here to affirm that every human life is a sacred gift from God, possessing inherent dignity and the eternal potential for redemption. Our faith is rooted in a God of restorative justice, not retributive vengeance. We follow a teacher who himself was a victim of state-sanctioned execution and who, in his final moments, offered forgiveness and challenged us to choose a different path. The United Church of Christ, our denomination, has formally opposed capital punishment since 1969, recognizing that murder is wrong, whether committed by individuals or the state. For we believe that the death penalty negates the power of redemption, that it perpetuates systemic injustice, and that it fails to heal. So today I join my voice with generations of United Church of Christ members, the General Synod of our denomination, and this congregation's board of justice and witness to call for the total elimination of the death penalty. Let us move away from the instrument of death and toward a future where we know that the things that make for peace, and that is choosing life, mercy, and a justice that truly heals. It's now my honor to introduce to you Abe Bonowitz from the Death Penalty Action.
Reverend Melanie Marsh.
Thank you very much, Reverend Hutner, Reverend Dr. Hutner, Reverend Marsh, Reverend Smith. We're grateful to be with you here at your beautiful church here in Coral Gables. My name is Abraham Bonowitz. That's A-B-R-A-H-A-M. Bonowitz, B as in boy, O, N as in Nancy, O-W-I-T-Z. I'm the executive director of Death Penalty Action, which is a national organization. I'm here and glad to be here in the balmy weather. I live in Columbus, Ohio, where my wife tells me last night they had more snow and it's 17 degrees. So we're glad to be here. Today, we are launching a campaign called For Whom the Bells Toll. And this is an opportunity for any people of faith or otherwise who are in community in opposition to the death penalty to speak out, to say, we oppose this. Because after a record-setting year of executions last year in Florida with 19 executions, now already we're about to have the first execution in 2026. And there are 3 executions scheduled to take place over 21 days. And if Governor DeSantis continues to behave as he did last year, he'll continue to put, every time they kill somebody, they only have 3 death watch cells. So every time they kill somebody, they'll move each person to the next cell and add another one. This is torture. It's death row is torture. What we're asking, all of the people who are facing a death warrant, who've exhausted their appeals, just don't know when it's their turn to get that tap on the shoulder and say, let's go. But I want to make sure that it's very, very clear that we remember the victims. That's one of the dismissals that we who oppose the death penalty often get. You don't care about victim families. Well, in fact, we're about to hear from a Florida murder victim family member, but I want to make sure that it's clear that when we talk about Ronald Heath, we're also talking about Michael Sheridan. And our prayers go out to his family and friends and loved ones and the people who care about him now, and all of the victims, family in that case as well. Um, in addition, Melvin Trotter is scheduled to be executed on February 24th. The name of his victim was Virgie Langford. And the weekend prior, the For Whom the Bells Toll campaign asks and invites communities who are in prayer to pray for all concerned, including the victim families, and many did this past weekend during their worship services. Finally, on March 3rd, just 1 week after Melvin Trotter is scheduled to be killed, they're going to kill Billy Kearse, who's on death row facing execution for the murder of Fort Pierce police officer Danny Parrish. Now, in each of these cases, there are deep concerns. With Ronald Heath's in particular, because he's up tomorrow evening, we have extreme disparities between him and his co-defendant, who did not get a death sentence and who had incentivized testimony that helped him avoid a death sentence while sending Ronald Heath to death row, and also a non-unanimous jury. 10 to 2 was the non-unanimous jury vote. And that also, Florida's the only state where this is happening. And the courts won't even look at it or consider how this is an anomaly and should be considered
with this For Whom the Bell Tolls launching this, so that we all are here to pull the bell every time there's an execution in Florida and anywhere in the United States, for a memory of the person getting executed, their families, and people who care about them a lot. I wanted to say to the governor, why kill people? Who kill people? To show us Americans, Floridians, that killing people is wrong. So I will be the first to ring the bell, and we will go on from there. This is in memory of my father, Reverend Bill Bossler, and for all the men and women in Florida and United States that getting executed, their families, their friends, and the ones that become victims of execution.
Show us Americans. To ring the bell, and
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Bell. About that.
Sure. Thank you for asking about the bell. It says on the front, Delaware citizens opposed to the death penalty. We call this the Delaware Bell. And the reason is because in Delaware, during the time when they had the death penalty, they had 18 executions. And the organization made this bell to toll outside the prison in Smyrna, Delaware, which they did for most of those 18 executions in the current era of the death penalty, which is since 1972. Then they stopped struck it down, found it unconstitutional. And the legislature chose not to bring it back. And because of that, they have no more executions there. In fact, in 2024, they actually passed a bill to scrub all the death penalty language out of their state statute. And last year, they took the first step towards a constitutional prohibition of the death penalty. So the group, Delaware Citizens Opposed to the Death Penalty, said, we could put our bell in a museum or we could send it out to the world. And they called me and Death Penalty Action and said, would you please come and take this bell and take it around the world, around to the country, and help bring out the death penalty in other states. So this bell has been tolled in front of death row prisons while executions are taking place, as well as in state capitals in Indiana, Tennessee, Missouri, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, and probably a couple other states that are not coming to mind at this time, and certainly here in Florida and Louisiana. So that's why we're here. And because there has already been this For Whom the Bells Toll campaign. Now, that's also a story. There was a bishop in the Philippines who they were having an execution there, and he called on all the Catholic churches to toll their bells. And Bishop Sullivan in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, decided to take that on in Virginia. And until a few years ago, when Virginia abolished its death penalty, they were second to Texas in terms of number of executions. So they began to toll the bells at the time of executions in Virginia. And a nun, Sister Dorothy Briggs, decided to make that a thing and invite communities of faith anywhere to toll their bells at the time of executions. And she created this campaign, For Whom the Bells Toll. And I worked with her in the 1990s under a different organization to help churches know when's it time to toll our bells. And then we picked it back up more recently and have created this national campaign.
You said we're launching today.
Yes, so
it's a continuation.
Yes, well, it's a launch in Florida.
got it.
Okay, to really put out the call to Florida churches, and that's why we're so grateful that the United Church of Christ here in Coral Gables is one of dozens of churches that have already signed up, and we'll have that list out tomorrow. We did a similar thing at a church in St. Pete on Thursday, in Orlando on Friday. We were in Jacksonville yesterday. Today we're here. Tomorrow we'll be back in Jacksonville with another press conference like this one, and we're inviting any church that wants to sign up, get one of these signs. Many don't have bells, so if you don't have bells or you can't control the timing of them, we were in a church yesterday that the bells don't work anymore, but they're still putting up the sign, and they're still praying, and they're still educating the people around them.
For like alternatives to the death penalty. About other.
Well, what I want to say is, so we don't need to advocate for an alternative because we just oppose the death penalty, and the alternative is what it is in each state, which in most cases is death by incarceration. People call it life without the possibility of parole, but really it's death by incarceration. And we don't necessarily advocate for that in all cases. There are some people who, as they presently exist, should never be free again. But there are people who can redeem themselves. And, in an ideal world, there would be consideration for that. This state, this legislature is not interested in anything other than making it as cruel as possible. And we oppose that. But what I want to say, though, is that when we talk about the alternative for the death penalty and who really benefits from that, I would make the argument that victim families benefit from there not being executions. Because when we tell a victim family, wait until we kill the guy, and then you'll feel better, what we're asking them to do is put their healing process on hold. The person that killed Suzanne's father and stabbed her and left her for dead, that was in 1986. And some of the people being executed here in Florida have been there for 40 years. Why should they have to wait that long for their justice? And some people would say, make it faster. And then you have to ask, well, Florida has 30 people who were wrongly sentenced to death and then later freed. Well, 29 were later freed. Frank Smith died on death row, and a couple months later, his appeal came through and he was exonerated. But it was too late; he was dead. But for the vast majority of people, where there's a murder and they catch the person and they're convicted, they don't get a death sentence. They get death by incarceration or maybe something less. And what that means for victim families is they don't have to worry about this person coming out. They know that they're going to be held accountable and we're going to be safe from them, and they can begin a healing process. Because there's always going to be that empty chair at the table when the family gathers. No amount of killing will bring back our loved ones. What we are doing is making more victim families and the families of the people that we're killing. And also, we're asking state workers to take on the burden of killing a defenseless person. Sometimes killing is necessary. If you're in the military, if you're in the police and there's a bank robbery happening, people are shooting each other and somebody ends up dead, okay. But once you capture the person and disarm them, in the military, you are obligated to protect them from further harm. And the only place where we're taking people who are now rendered harmless and killing them is when there's a death sentence. Thank you all so much. I'm grateful to be with you today, and turn off that live stream and talk a little bit more.